A man who called down lightning and burned nobles alive. A man who wrote a curse in his own blood and cursed an entire nation as he died. A man whose severed head is said to have flown through the night sky, searching for its body. All three of these men really existed. In Japan, these spirits are called onryo, vengeful spirits. The belief is that the spirit of someone who died consumed by resentment can bring disaster on the living. Three men in particular were feared above all others and are still worshipped as gods in Japan today. They're known as the three great vengeful spirits of Japan. Why did they end up carrying such deep resentment? And why, over 1,000 years later, do people in Japan still worship them as gods? Today, we're going to unpack that. Our first figure is Sugawara no Michizane, a real historical person who lived in the 9th century during Japan's Heian period. To understand his story, you need to understand how Japan worked back then. Heian-era Japan was an aristocratic society built entirely around the emperor. Your political rank, essentially how close you could get to the emperor, determined your entire life. And that rank was almost always decided by family bloodline, not ability. One family in particular, the Fujiwara clan, had married their daughters into the imperial family for generations, making them the single most powerful noble house in the country. Michizane was a rare exception in this rigid, birth-based system, a man who rose to the very top on sheer talent alone. Brilliant in poetry, deeply trusted by the emperor himself, he rose to become one of the emperor's closest aides. So why was this a problem? To a family like the Fujiwara, who had built their power entirely on bloodline, a man like Michizane, rising purely on merit, was a direct threat. One man in particular, Fujiwara no Tokihira, saw him as a rival to be eliminated. In 901, Tokihira orchestrated Michizane's downfall through political scheming, fabricating a charge that Michizane was plotting treason against the emperor, a charge with essentially no real evidence behind it. Michizane was exiled to Dazaifu in Kyushu, far, far from the capital. Cut off from his beloved family and the capital on a false charge, Michizane sank into deep despair. On top of that, the house he was given leaked when it rained, and he struggled just to find enough to eat. Malnourished, he began suffering from beriberi and skin disease. Mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion. Worn down by both, Michizane died 2 years later, still in exile. This is where things start to get frightening. After Michizane's death, one strange event after another struck the capital. First, Fujiwara no Tokihira, the man behind his exile, fell ill and died at just 39 years old. Then Tokihira's nephew, Crown Prince Yasuakira, who had been next in line for the throne, died suddenly at only 21. Others who had informed against Michizane also began falling ill and dying, one after another. Then, in the year 930, lightning struck the Seiryoden, the building right next to the emperor's own residence, killing several nobles who happened to be there. Emperor Daigo, who was reigning at the time, was deeply shaken by the lightning strike and fell seriously ill. Only a few months later, Emperor Daigo himself passed away. Why were people so convinced this was a curse? At the time, Japan employed onmyoji, professional diviners whose job was to determine the causes of disasters and illness. They concluded that this was the wrath of Michizane, a man wrongfully destroyed, and reported this to the court. In an age with no scientific explanation for any of this, it was more than convincing enough. This is Lord Michizane's curse. The people of the capital were terrified. To calm his anger, the court restored Michizane's rank posthumously and eventually enshrined him as a deity. Tenman Daijizai Tenjin. This is the origin of the Tenmangu shrines found all across Japan today. Here's the interesting part. Today, Michizane is worshipped as the god of scholarship and learning, a nod to the brilliant scholar he was in life. Every year, students visit Tenmangu shrines to pray for success in their exams. The vengeful spirit who once terrorized the capital became, over 1,000 years, one of the most beloved deities in all of Japan. Our second figure is Taira no Masakado, a warrior of the mid-10th century during the Heian period. Masakado was based in the Kanto region, roughly the area covering modern-day Tokyo and Ibaraki. After defeating rivals within his own clan and expanding his power, by around 935, following a series of battles, he had effectively taken control of a large swath of the Kanto region. And then he did something extraordinary. He declared himself Shinno, a new emperor, a rival authority to the emperor himself. At the time, this was about as serious an act of rebellion as Japan had ever seen. The imperial court, enraged, sent an army to crush him. In the year 940, Masakado was defeated and killed by two warriors, his own cousin, Taira no Sadamori, and Fujiwara no Hidesato. According to legend, he was struck down by an arrow to the forehead. His severed head was carried roughly 500 kilometers from the Kanto region all the way to the capital, Kyoto. Once it finally arrived, the head was displayed along Miyako-oji, the main thoroughfare of Heian-era Kyoto, as a public warning. This is what happens to traitors. But this is where the legend begins. According to legend, Masakado's severed head didn't decay for 3 months. His eyes stayed open. His teeth remained clenched, as if he were still alive. And then, one night, the head is said to have suddenly cried out, risen into the night sky in search of its body, and flown east toward Kanto. Or so the story has been passed down. The place where the head is said to have finally fallen, exhausted, is believed to be the site now known as Masakado-zuka, Masakado's Mound, in Otemachi, Tokyo. This location happens to sit on some of the most valuable real estate in all of Japan, right in the center of Tokyo, near the Imperial Palace and the Otemachi Business District. And remarkably, this one small plot of land has never been redeveloped. It remains, to this day, a mound dedicated to Masakado. Why? Because, according to historical record, misfortune has repeatedly struck anyone who tried to remove it. In 1923, following the Great Kanto earthquake, the Ministry of Finance demolished the mound to rebuild its offices on the site. A few years later, the finance minister died suddenly, and more than a dozen people connected to the project died in quick succession, which is when the rumor of Masakado's curse is said to have started spreading. Then, after that, following World War II, the Allied Occupation Authority, GHQ, began leveling the site with a bulldozer to build a parking lot. The bulldozer overturned, the operator died in the accident, and the project was abandoned. Even today, surrounded by the skyscrapers of Otemachi, Masakado-zuka is still carefully maintained and honored, and Japanese office workers from nearby buildings still visit to pay their respects. A 1,000-year-old warrior's spirit, still resting at the very center of Tokyo. It's probably one of a kind, anywhere in the world. Our third figure is different from the other two in one crucial way. He was an emperor himself. Emperor Sutoku was the 75th emperor of Japan, reigning in the 12th century. Due to a bitter falling out with his father, Emperor Toba, Sutoku was forced to abdicate the throne while still young, and his younger brother took the throne instead, becoming Emperor Go Shirakawa. That resentment finally exploded into armed conflict in 1156. This became known as the Hogen Rebellion. Sutoku's side lost, and Sutoku, a man who had once been emperor, was exiled to Sanuki province in what is now Kagawa Prefecture. For a former head of state to be exiled as a common criminal was almost unheard of. The last comparable case had happened roughly 400 years earlier. In Sanuki, Sutoku turned to Buddhism for comfort. He copied out, with his own hands, a set of sacred texts known as the 5 Great Mahayana Sutras, an estimated 1.5 million characters or more over the course of 3 years. It was his final wish, to honor those who had died in the war and to atone for his own role in it. But Go Shirakawa refused to accept them, suspecting the sutras carried some kind of curse and wouldn't even allow them to enter the capital. Rejected after 3 years of devoted work offered as atonement, Sutoku was consumed by despair, and then by rage. According to legend, he bit through his own tongue and used his own blood to write a vow on the sutras. "I will turn the power of this sutra into a curse. I will become the greatest demon this nation has ever known. I will tear the emperor down to the level of the people and raise the people up to the throne." Having sworn this, he let his hair and nails grow uncut for the rest of his life, and in 1164, Sutoku died in exile in Sanuki. After Sutoku's death, misfortune struck the capital again and again. In 1176, several women closely connected to Go Shirakawa all died within the space of a single year. In 1177, a massive fire tore through Kyoto, burning a third of the city and destroying the great imperial hall where coronations were held. And in the 1180s, the Genpei War, a civil war engulfing the entire country, broke out. This is all Emperor Sutoku's curse. People at the time genuinely believed it. No one was more terrified than Go Shirakawa himself. He personally destroyed the very document proclaiming his own victory over Sutoku, and hastily granted Sutoku, a man he'd only ever referred to disparagingly, the far more dignified posthumous title of Sutoku-in. The victor, having once utterly crushed his rival, was now so afraid that he tore up the very proof of his own triumph. That's how deeply Sutoku's curse was feared. The court built a shrine at the site of the Hogen Rebellion battlefield to try to appease his spirit, but the fear never fully went away. More than 700 years later, in 1868, Emperor Meiji finally brought Sutoku's spirit back from Sanuki to Kyoto, formally enshrining him as Shiramine Jingū, an emperor who left behind the most feared curse in Japanese history. Sutoku's story is still retold today in No and Kabuki theater. Sugawara no Michizane, Taira no Masakado, Emperor Sutoku. All three share something in common. Each was wronged without just cause and died consumed by deep resentment. And in each case, the misfortunes that followed their deaths were tied directly back to their wrath. Which raises an interesting question. Why didn't people in Japan simply fear these men and move on? Why do they still go out of their way to honor them as gods, even today? The answer lies in a distinctive way Japanese culture has long thought about death. The belief is that resentment only grows stronger the more you try to suppress it. But if you honor it, treat it with genuine respect and care, the spirit can finally find peace and can even become a protector of the living. Just as Michizane became the god of scholarship, a feared, vengeful spirit can, over time, become a beloved deity. It's a uniquely Japanese narrative pattern, from curse to faith. If you ever find yourself in Tokyo, look for Masakado quietly tucked between the skyscrapers of Otemachi. A 1,000-year-old warrior spirit is still resting there today. Thanks so much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments which Japanese legend you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.